Hi everyone, today we're going to be discussing the influences of social movements on politics. This is in regards to my discourse community, which is the political science field. We're going to get ready to start the presentation with a brief introduction on the impacts of social movements on politics. Social movements in politics have gone toe to toe throughout history. Social movements are crucial to a society in that they voice the needs of the people. Political scientists who study the trends of the reoccurrence of social movements are currently studying one of the biggest questions that will be covered in today's presentation. What are the impacts of social movements on politics? We're going to start by looking at an example from the Me Too movement that was really popular in the fall of 2017 and carried into 2018. It is still a prominent topic in today's society. The movement in and of itself, the name of it isn't as talked about, but it is still very important. This was a successful movement because it utilized communities and social media. Just a reminder, the Me Too movement brought to light those who had been impacted by sexual assault in different spheres of politics, music, and movie industries. When I say that this movement utilized communities and social media well, this movement targeted the communities it needed, that those who were impacted or violated in this way by sexual assault or harassment, and it gave them a voice to voice their story and to share their trauma, but to also advocate for those who feel silenced. Social media was also a great way in getting this movement going. Voices were heard, and many individuals were able to speak on behalf of their story and to shed light. And many individuals who were accused of doing such atrocities were brought to justice. This movement is an example which has touched the political field. If we remember a few years ago, back to Brett Kavanaugh, before he became a Supreme Court justice, he was accused of sexual misconduct in college, and it was a very big moral debate and issue within the political sphere. It really did shake the political scene, and we can see him now as a Supreme Court justice. But that was one of the many sexual assault allegations against politicians that shook this political world. Now we'll take a look at the roots of social movements. Grassroots organizations impact social movements, as in the community that the social movement starts from. Then it really starts from the need of the people in that community, and it grows larger. Community mobilizers are key to creating a successful and very diverse in number and diverse in location social movement. They must utilize resources correctly, such as social media. They must stay on top of the game of current trends and current resources used to broaden their voice. Now we'll take a look at the impact on politics. Social movements impact on politics by targeting individuals of certain communities, which in turn impacts voting decisions. If we look back to last fall during the presidential election, we can look at the debates. They're very much so centered around different movements that were happening, such as the Black Lives Matter movement and justice. Certain movements will tap into certain politicians and political parties' key values to strike a common chord, to have an advocate in office for their cause. Social movements try to create new institutions in the government when they try to impact politics, and the government is expected to make sure diverse voices are heard in policymaking. I think we all can agree somewhat that within the past 5 to 6 years, we've seen a diverse number of individuals in Senate seats and House seats and representatives of our cities. This is just another way social movements are bringing attention the need to diversify voices in our governmental offices. An example from history we pull from President John F. Kennedy. He responded to the nuclear-free movement by establishing the Arms Control Disarmament Agency. He responded to the very efficient and the very efficient way that this movement came about, utilizing mobility, and utilizing mobility, it efficiently triggered Kennedy to establish the arms control. So this is an example from history of a movement, of a social movement directly implementing and impacting legislative change. Now we're going to take a look at the digital component of social movements on political change. Many marginalized groups and movements turn to social media for recognition from politicians for change. Social media helps to diversify voices for change. Once again, many social movements try to strike a common chord with a political party or a politician to get an advocate in office for their cause. Social media helps supporters of movements to be active independently yet collectively. Social media has a beautiful way of bringing people together who are in different locations, but it allows people to have a voice where they are and bring attention to this cry and this call for justice where they are. But this component, the conversation begins to heat up, calling for political attention and policy change. Social media also allows movements to shape the political narrative to establish policy change. Once again, going back to last fall with the debates between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and the events of the summer and the spring and the fall with the Black Lives Matter protests calling for justice, we've seen that during the debates, a central topic was the cries of the Black Lives Matter movement calling for justice and policy change, and many changes that were discussed and centralized throughout the Black Lives Matter movement. This was huge, and it still is. And that is an example of a movement and their central cries being discussed on a political main stage, and politicians directly attempting to answer those questions. So these are the pros. Now we're going to take a look at the cons. The downside of social movements reaching politics via social media. Some traditional movements have a limited reach, and social media can only go so far for these movements. Social media-led protests can have both good and bad effects. And also, social media-led protests can have limited influence because of the reach to those who may stumble across the message. While researching, one of the problems or gaps that I realized was that authors didn't really specify which movements or which types of societies have these issues of limitations. And so through my research, what I could conclude is that it depends on what type of society you live in. So the America, we have freedom of speech and demonstration. We live in a democracy, whereas those who live under a dictatorship may have less ability to have their voices heard, and the people are not as heard. This could also, this limitation of social media to social movements and governmental change could also be within a statewide or a citywide issue where governments may not respond to social media as well. It just depends on what is a common pattern that governments and political officials respond to. So that was a problem that I realized. So moving on to the methodology of social movements to impact politics. From my research through various scholarly journals, I've been able to identify the best strategies and understand that strategy is important to social movements, to implementing change within governments, and influencing politicians to advocate for their cause. So my research from my notes and Cornell styled notes and everything that I've gathered has really allowed me to understand strategy is extremely important. So the success of movements depends on favorable political circumstances. Basically going back to the fact that I just said that movements try to strike a chord with certain political parties or politicians to once again have them be an advocate. Targeting political party agendas in correlation to central focus of movement produces success. The types of mobilization strategies matters to promote political influence and impact mobilization. The use of resources is very important. Movements need to be up to date with the newest forms of technology and communication. So the best methods that I found from my research is that studies show that social movements that focus on a central topic while holding more frequent, larger protests prove to be more effective, and protest movement size matters for political attention. We've seen this. I will once again go back to the Black Lives Matter protests of basically almost all of 2020 last year. We've seen that the they've been very frequent, very widespread. Honestly, it's been a global movement now, from different countries and societies and cities, people holding these protests and the cry for justice. They're frequent, they are large, they have a central message, and it's, hey, this is, we are protesting because we desire justice and reform and all of these things. And they're under the main banner of justice. So that is an example of protest size, the size of the protest mattering for political attention. That was a really big topic that the two presidential candidates last fall had to cover. And it has been a central focus of a lot of White House staff committees and all these different things been focused to creating, implementing justice. Sorry about that. Now we'll look at the conclusion. We've come to the end of this presentation. In all, this overview of the impacts of social movements on politics have shaped a better understanding of the way politics respond to the needs of the people. Not only does this presentation give a clear understanding of the nature of social movements and their impacts on politics, but it discusses the different techniques used by movements to get political attention. The voices of the people are heard through social movements, and global history has proven that to be true. It is evident to see that the power of the people lies not only within the vote, but also in the voice and the action of gathering together. This study of this phenomena by political scientists continues to update itself over time with the broadening horizons of social media platforms and also the advancement of media. Thank you so much for paying attention and listening to this presentation and watching and interacting. I hope you all have a great day. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Thank you so much.